So, Princess Anne just did something the palace usually never does. She reportedly drew a hard line through an entire family, the Parker Bowles family, and told the institution around her that they were no longer welcome inside the private royal circle she personally protects. And the reason is honestly more painful than anyone expected. Because we're not talking about a seating chart squabble at some garden party. We're not talking about who gets invited to Sandringham for Christmas lunch. We're talking about the Princess Royal, the most disciplined working member of the entire House of Windsor, reportedly telling her own brother the king that a specific branch of his wife's family had crossed a line the monarchy could no longer absorb quietly. And then King Charles did something in response that, according to palace observers, nobody around him predicted. That's not a family disagreement. That's not sibling friction over old wounds. That's the Princess Royal, a woman who has spent 50 years saying almost nothing publicly about anyone, reportedly pulling rank inside the one institution that runs on the illusion that everyone is aligned. And when Anne pulls rank, insiders describe it as the closest thing the modern monarchy has to a red alert. Before we get into it, if you're new here on Crown Watch, hit subscribe so you don't miss the updates on this one, because this story is reportedly still moving inside the palace week by week, and the next chapter has not landed yet. So let's talk about what actually happened here, because the timeline is pretty revealing when you lay it all out. According to sources close to the Princess Royal's office at Gatcombe Park, the tension didn't start last month. It's been building reportedly since the coronation itself, when the Parker Bowles family, meaning Camilla's children Tom and Laura, her ex-husband Andrew, and the wider extended relatives, were given a level of visibility inside the ceremony that some senior royals reportedly found jarring. Anne, who served as gold stick in waiting during the coronation, which is essentially the sovereign's personal ceremonial protector on horseback, reportedly noticed the choreography shift in real time. She reportedly said very little that day. But those who work with her say Anne has a way of noting things quietly and acting on them months later, when the room has forgotten. The first real friction reportedly landed in early spring, when a private family briefing at Clarence House allegedly discussed expanding certain Parker Bowles relatives into semi-official patronage support. A patronage, by the way, is the formal association between a royal and a charity or organization, and it's one of the most valuable currencies the monarchy has to hand out. Anne reportedly objected, not loudly, not publicly, but firmly in writing, through her private secretary, which is essentially the chief of staff who runs a senior royal's household and communicates on their behalf. And here's where it gets interesting. That written objection reportedly never made it into the formal palace record. It was, according to one insider, quietly absorbed. And Anne noticed. Then came the summer. According to those briefed on the matter, a senior auditor working inside one of the royal households flagged what he described as an irregular pattern of hospitality being extended to two members of the Parker Bowles extended family. We're talking reportedly about access to grace and favor accommodation, which is the term for royal properties lent out rent-free to approved individuals, and reportedly the use of a royal-adjacent car and driver during a private weekend at Windsor. The amounts weren't massive. Reportedly around £5,000 a month in soft benefits. I know that sounds incredibly boring, but stay with me, because it's actually the key. Because in royal accounting, it's never the number that matters, it's the precedent. Once a non-blood relative of the consort receives that kind of benefit, and it goes unchallenged, it becomes structural. And Anne, reportedly, does not do structural drift. Fade in the bontet. Sources describe her reading it at her kitchen table at 6:47 in the morning, in the same silence she reportedly reserves for the worst news. She didn't call Charles, she didn't call Camilla. She reportedly called her own private secretary and asked one question, which was whether the disclosure had been made through the proper channels. It hadn't, and that's the detail that changes everything. Now here's where the contradiction starts to emerge between what Clarence House was projecting and what was actually happening behind closed doors. Publicly, Charles and Camilla have spent the last 2 years building the image of a modernized, blended royal family. Camilla's grandchildren have been photographed at the coronation. Tom Parker Bowles has become a fixture on the culinary and social circuit, always described in the press as charming and self-deprecating. Laura keeps a lower profile but is reportedly close to her mother, in a way that Charles himself is said to admire. And honestly, that's hard to argue with. Camilla waited decades for legitimacy inside this institution. It makes emotional sense that once she got it, She'd want her own children folded into the warmth of it. And I understand that instinct too. Any parent who's spent years watching their kids be tabloid punchlines would want to give them, finally, a seat at the table. But here's the thing. The House of Windsor doesn't operate on emotional logic. It operates on something Anne has reportedly protected her entire adult life, which is the principle that the institution is bigger than any one marriage inside it. And when a consort's family starts receiving benefits that blur the line between private hospitality and official royal support, that principle starts to erode. Not in one dramatic collapse, in small, quiet, structural drift, the kind you only notice when it's too late to reverse. According to palace observers, Anne's position is not personal. She reportedly has cordial relationships with both Tom and Laura. She's been photographed with them. She's shared events with them. This isn't a Windsor turf war over Camilla the person. It's reportedly a line in the sand moment over the Parker Bowles extended family, the cousins and in-laws, and adjacent relatives who Anne reportedly believes have started to treat royal proximity as a kind of soft inheritance. And that's not nothing. That's a constitutional question dressed up as a family one. The ripple started reaching other households almost immediately. William reportedly was briefed by his own private secretary within 48 hours of Anne's objection being formalized. And William reportedly did something interesting. He didn't take a side publicly, but he reportedly asked for his own household to conduct a parallel review of all hospitality extended to non-working royal relatives across the estates. That's not neutral. That's the future king quietly aligning with his aunt. Catherine, according to sources at Kensington Palace, reportedly said very little, but she and Anne have long been described by insiders as unexpectedly close, bonded by a shared instinct for institutional caution. Meanwhile, Camilla reportedly learned about Anne's objection secondhand, from a member of her own household, over a Friday afternoon tea. She reportedly set her cup down very carefully. She didn't say anything for almost a full minute. And here's where the scene tightens. Because that weekend at Highgrove, according to those briefed on the conversation, Charles and Camilla reportedly had a discussion that lasted well into the evening. A member of household staff described the drawing room lights staying on past 11. Camilla, reportedly, was seated in the armchair closest to the fireplace, the one she's used since the early days of their marriage. Charles was standing. He reportedly held a slim leather folder in his hand the entire time. That folder reportedly contained Anne's formal written objection, along with the auditor's memo. He didn't open it, he just held it. And I honestly can't stop thinking about that detail, because in royal circles a folder that stays closed is often more consequential than one that gets read aloud. Camilla reportedly asked him what he intended to do. Charles reportedly did not answer immediately. And that silence, according to one insider, was the loudest moment inside that household in months. Now here's the thing. In any other family, a disagreement between siblings about who gets what privilege would stay inside the walls of the house. But in the Windsors, every internal decision has a public shadow, because the following Monday, an aide reportedly noticed something quietly disappear from a scheduled diary. A private lunch between Camilla and two of her extended Parker Bowles cousins at a royal residence had reportedly been removed from the calendar. No announcement. No explanation, just a soft cancellation, and in palace language, a soft cancellation is a signal. It's the institution saying we heard the objection, we're not commenting on it, but we're adjusting. That's not institutional caution, that's Anne winning a round without ever raising her voice. But the story didn't stop there, because the extended Parker Bowles family reportedly did not take the adjustment quietly. According to sources close to the situation, at least one senior member of that family reportedly reached out through back channels to express dismay. The word used, reportedly, was humiliated. And that word traveled. It reached Camilla. It reached Charles. It reportedly reached Anne, who is said to have received it the way she receives most emotional pressure, which is by doing absolutely nothing and letting the silence do the work. Then came the confrontation, and this is the part that palace observers describe as the moment the whole dynamic tilted. According to those briefed on the meeting, Charles requested a private audience with his sister at Windsor, not a working meeting, not a family gathering. A private audience, which in royal terms means the two of them alone, no aides in the room, no notes taken. The meeting reportedly took place on a weekday afternoon in one of the smaller sitting rooms in the private apartments. Anne, reportedly, was wearing one of her familiar tailored day suits, the kind she's worn to 1,000 engagements. Charles was reportedly dressed more informally than usual, in a soft jacket, no tie, 2 armchairs, a low table between them, a pot of tea that reportedly went cold. Charles reportedly opened by asking her, directly, whether she was aware of how her objection had reverberated through Camilla's family. Anne reportedly answered that she was. He reportedly asked whether she understood that Camilla had felt personally targeted. Anne reportedly answered that Camilla was not the subject of the objection, and that any personal reading of it was, respectfully, not her concern. Sources describe Charles's voice rising slightly at that point, then stopping. He reportedly covered his eyes with one hand for a moment. Anne, reportedly, did not move. And then she reportedly said the line that, according to insiders, is the line the entire palace is still processing. She reportedly told her brother that the institution had survived their mother because their mother had understood, every single day of her 70-year reign, that the family serves the crown and not the other way around. And she reportedly said that if Charles allowed the Parker Bowles extended family to become a structural part of the working monarchy, he would be the first sovereign in a century to reverse that principle. She reportedly said it quietly. She reportedly said it once. And then, according to the insider, she reportedly added that she was not asking him to choose between his wife and his sister. She was asking him to choose between his wife's family and his mother's institution. That's a pretty remarkable admission from the Princess Royal, because Anne almost never invokes the late Queen in an argument. She reportedly considers it a form of emotional escalation she does not permit herself. The fact that she reportedly used it in that room, to that brother, on that afternoon, tells you exactly how serious she considered the moment to be. Charles reportedly did not respond immediately. He reportedly stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the long walk for what one source described as a very long time. And then he reportedly turned around and did the thing that shocked everyone, because King Charles, according to palace observers, did not overrule his sister. He did not defend the extended Parker Bowles hospitality arrangements. He did not push back on the auditor's memo. Instead, he reportedly agreed to a full internal review of every non-official benefit extended to any consort-adjacent family member across every royal household. Not just the Parker Bowles arrangements, all of them, retroactive, comprehensive, documented. And he reportedly asked Anne to co-chair the oversight of that review with his own principal private secretary, which is the most senior civil servant inside the sovereign's household, essentially the person who runs the monarchy day to day. That's not a compromise. That's the king reportedly handing his sister institutional authority over an issue that touches his own wife's family. And in the language of the palace, that is an almost unprecedented act of deference. Because Charles, historically, has been described by insiders as fiercely protective of Camilla, he reportedly rebuilt the entire perception of her over 3 decades. And in this moment, according to those briefed on the meeting, he reportedly chose the institution over the perception. He reportedly chose his mother's principle over his wife's family's comfort. And he reportedly did it in one afternoon, in one room, with one cold pot of tea between them. Camilla reportedly learned about the decision that same evening. Sources describe her as composed. She reportedly did not argue. She reportedly asked only one question, which was whether her own children Tom and Laura would be affected by the review. Charles reportedly told her that his children and hers, meaning the working royal generation, were not the subject of the exercise, but he reportedly could not offer the same assurance about the extended relatives. And that, according to one insider, was the moment Camilla understood that her husband, for all his love, had reportedly just placed a boundary around her family that would not be moved. Now here's the ripple. Because within a week of that meeting, the shift began to show up in ways the public could see, even if they didn't know what they were looking at. A scheduled appearance by one Parker Bowles relative at a royal-adjacent charity event was reportedly quietly withdrawn. A grace and favor arrangement was reportedly restructured onto a formal rental basis at market rate. A driver reportedly reassigned, small things, invisible to most people, but to those who read the palace like weather, unmistakable. And then the media caught the scent. Reportedly first through a single line in a Sunday broadsheet about a review of royal household hospitality practices. Then through a follow-up in a midweek paper about tensions between the Princess Royal's office and Clarence House. Neither story named the Parker Bowles family directly. Both stories reportedly landed on Camilla's desk within hours, and the public, honestly, started to piece it together on their own. The reactions split along familiar lines. Older citizens, particularly those who remember the late Queen's decades of quiet discipline, reportedly viewed Anne's stand as long overdue. On radio phone-ins across the country, callers reportedly used the word backbone. They reportedly said Anne was the last member of the family who understood what her mother had built. Younger demographics, particularly on social platforms, reportedly viewed it differently. Many framed it as the institution being cruel to a woman, Camilla, who had already endured decades of public rejection and was finally allowed to have her family close. Both readings, honestly, contain something true. That's the two truths held at once that makes this story so hard to walk away from. And, in the middle of all of it, one small human detail reportedly landed inside the palace that sources describe as more affecting than any of the memos. According to one aide, Anne received a handwritten note from Camilla the week after the meeting. It was reportedly short, just a few lines. Camilla reportedly did not apologize, and she reportedly did not ask Anne to reverse anything. She reportedly wrote only that she understood the objection was not personal, and that she was grateful Anne had raised it in a room and not in a headline. Anne reportedly kept the note. Sources say she placed it inside the same slim leather folder that had held the auditor's memo, 2 documents. One folder, the whole story, reportedly, sitting on a desk at Gatcombe. This action, according to those briefed on it, was reportedly taken to protect the institution, not to punish a family. That's the reframe Anne's office has quietly circulated to those who ask. It's not a ban in the tabloid sense, it's a boundary in the constitutional sense, and the distinction, in palace terms, is everything. Because a ban is emotional and reversible, a boundary is structural and permanent. Anne, reportedly, deals only in the second kind. Meanwhile, William reportedly requested a private briefing on the outcome of the meeting between his father and his aunt. He reportedly said very little during that briefing. But according to one source, he reportedly closed the folder in front of him at the end of it and said only that his aunt had done what needed to be done. That's not a neutral reaction from the future king. That's a signal that the next reign will reportedly inherit Anne's principle, not Charles's compromise. And if that's true, then the Parker Bowles extended family's window of proximity to the working monarchy may have just quietly closed, not for a season, but for a generation. The Parker Bowles family themselves have reportedly said nothing publicly. Tom continues his work. Laura remains private. Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's ex-husband, reportedly continues to attend the occasional social event with his usual warmth. The extended cousins have reportedly retreated from the calendar entirely. And Camilla, according to observers who watched her closely at her most recent engagement, reportedly performed her duties with the same steady grace she always has. But those who know her best say her eyes have reportedly looked tired in a way they hadn't in years. And Charles, reportedly, has been quieter than usual. Aides describe him as thoughtful rather than distressed. He reportedly took a long walk alone at Sandringham the weekend after the decision was formalized. He reportedly carried nothing with him. No folder, no papers, just himself and the grounds his mother walked for 70 years. And whatever he thought about on that walk, sources say, he reportedly returned to the house looking settled in a way he hadn't looked in months. As if a decision he'd been avoiding for a long time had finally, honestly been made. What this whole situation illuminates is something the monarchy has been quietly wrestling with since the moment Elizabeth died. The crown is not a family. The family is not the crown. And when those two things collide, someone has to decide which one wins. For 70 years, the late Queen decided it every single day, quietly, without ever having to say the words out loud. Charles reportedly avoided the decision for as long as he could. Anne reportedly forced it. And now, for the first time in this reign, the answer has been given. Duty over affection. Institution over family. Silence over spectacle. That's the principle Anne reportedly protects with her whole life, and that's the principle her brother reportedly just chose to honor, even at the cost of his own wife's family's comfort. And somewhere in a study at Gatcombe, that slim leather folder reportedly still sits on a desk. An auditor's memo, a handwritten note from a sister-in-law, 2 pieces of paper that reportedly rewrote the boundary between the House of Windsor and the family who married into it. Anne, reportedly, has not opened it again. She doesn't need to. The decision has been made, the line has been drawn, and the monarchy, quietly, has been held. Before we wrap up, if you want to stay updated on royal family news as it develops, make sure to subscribe to Crown Watch so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.